Hi all, it's Professor Kat here to review genetics with you. So we've learned that in asexual reproduction, there's one parent, such as a single spider plant. Any of the offspring that we see here are getting all of their genes or all of their DNA from their one parent. And the offspring look the same as the parent because they have the same genes or DNA. So if we take a closer look at all of these little baby spider plants here, they are all going to look identical or exactly the same and have the same DNA. In contrast, let's look at sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, there are two parents, such as these two adorable squirrels here. You can name them if you want. Offspring get about half of their traits from each parent because they get exactly 50% of their DNA or genes from each parent. We have 2 copies of each chromosome, and living things get one of those copies from the father and one of those copies from the mother. And every offspring is unique. It's not exactly like either parent. It's a mix of both. Like you can see with this adorable baby squirrel that has the trait of both of these parents up here. And they are unique. There's nobody else like them in the world. So let's move on to understanding how genetics in sexual reproduction works. So we have 2 copies of each gene, like I mentioned before, and these copies are called alleles. So for example, for height, there might be a gene for tall and a gene for short. So we have 3 possible combinations that one individual can have. They could have both capital T's. They could have a capital T and a lowercase t, or they could have 2 lowercase t's. Now, anytime a living thing has 2 copies of the same allele, either 2 capital, which is dominant, or 2 lowercase, which is recessive, that means that their genes are called homozygous. And that just means same zygotes or genes. Now, in contrast, if a living thing has one of each, this is called heterozygous. But what we see or what is expressed is the dominant gene. So we know that it's dominant because it's represented by the capital letter. So in this case, even though this living thing carries the recessive short gene right here, the capital dominant gene is going to win out and it will appear tall, just like this living thing. Let's do some examples. So to figure out what the offspring is going to look like, first we have to know what the genes of both parents are. So remember that each living thing has 2 copies of each gene. So this is dad's 2 copies, and then over here we have mom's 2 copies. And these will be brought down into these boxes and will form whatever the offspring are going to be. So this would be like if there were 4 offspring, what the 4 offspring would look like. Of course, in real life, it doesn't work like that. It's just a percentage chance that it would be each box. So there's going to be a quarter chance it's going to turn out to be this box, a quarter chance this box, etc., etc. So in our first problem, we have capital T, lowercase t for tall and short. We're going to say that both parents are heterozygous. So they both have 1 capital T and they both have 1 lowercase t. And the way we would write this problem is capital T, lowercase t times dominant recessive. Okay, so we have this set up down here. We can see that these right here could represent mom's genes. It doesn't really matter. These right here could represent dad. Now let's see what's going to be in those 4 boxes for the offspring. So first we're going to do mom. This T right here, she brings it down into this box. she brings it down again. And then for her lowercase t, she brings it down into this box and down into that box. So we have now brought all of mom's genes down into the boxes. Now we're going to do dad. Dads go across. And when you're doing this on your own, it doesn't matter where dad or mom is. It just matters that one parent is on the top and their genes go down. The other parent is on the side and their genes go across. So dad's first allele is capital T for tall. Bring that over. Again, capital T for tall. His second allele in the second row, he's going to bring down lowercase t for short and lowercase t for short. So at the end, you see that we have 4 different boxes, but only 3 possible combinations. So the first possible combination that we have is capital, capital, and there's a 1/4 or a 25% chance that we're going to have capital, capital. The second one that we have is capital, lowercase, and there is a 1 in 2 chance that it's going to be heterozygous, having one of each allele. And then there is also a 1 in 4 chance that it is going to be lowercase t for short, because out of the 4 boxes, that is only 1 box. This is called the genotype, or what genes it has. Now we're going to talk about a second thing, which is the phenotype. That's what we see. So if we think about tall in this example, we know that the ones that are going to look tall are the ones that are capital, capital, and then mixed, because the capital letter is dominant over the recessive. So even though that recessive is in the gene, we're going to see the dominant. So tall is going to represent 3 out of 4 boxes, or 75% of the offspring, while short is only 1 box. Short would represent 1/4 or 25% of the offspring. Next, you're going to try a problem. And this one has to do with eye color. So in eye color, brown eyes are dominant over blue eyes. So if somebody has mixed genes where they have 1 capital B for brown and 1 lowercase b for blue, you will see brown eyes because capital is dominant over recessive. All right, so this time we're going to say that the first parent has one dominant and 1 recessive allele. So the first parent is heterozygous. They have 1 of each allele. And the second parent is going to be what we call homozygous recessive, because they have 2 of the same copy of the gene, homozygous, and it's recessive. So we would write this problem as capital B lowercase b times lowercase b, or dominant recessive times recessive recessive. I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure out 3 things for yourself. What is the Punnett square going to look like? What are the genotypes going to be? Like, what's the probability it's going to be capital B, capital B? What's the probability it's going to be lowercase, lowercase? And also, what are the phenotypes? What % chance is there the offspring will have brown eyes, and what % chance is it they'll have blue eyes? So pause the video, come back when you're ready to check your answers. All right, so first we're going to start with parent number 1. We're going to say parent number 1 is up here. It doesn't matter if it's mom or dad. And we're going to bring their alleles down. So we bring a capital B down into each of those boxes. And then we bring a lowercase b down into each of these boxes. And then these are the 4 genes that came from the first parent. So I'm going to circle them in that same color so you know that those 4 genes came from this parent, parent number 1. All right. let's move on to parent number 2. Parent number 2 is donating all lowercases to the party. So when we take this first lowercase allele and bring it across, it fills up the first row. And then we do the second thing with the second row, contributing a lowercase b or a recessive allele to each box. And we will circle those so you can see exactly which copy of each gene came from each parent. So let's look at the genotypes here. In this problem, we only have 2 genotypes. We don't have any capital. So you could write BB equals 0% or 0, or you could just leave it off because it's not something that you have as an answer in your problem. So our first genotype that we see on the chart is heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b. And we see that in this box right here, and this box right here. So 2 out of 4 boxes, that's half or 50%. And then we also see a 50% chance right here and right here of having 2 lowercase b's. So 2 lowercase b's is a 50% chance. Now let's look at the phenotypes. Phenotypes are what are expressed, what we actually see. So we have brown and we have blue. So I'm just going to go in with my blue highlighter and highlight any ones that are going to be blue. So let's see, the brown's going to win here over the blue. Here, it'll be blue. Here, it'll be blue. And then this offspring will be brown and this offspring will be brown. So I see very clearly that 50% of the offspring will be brown and 50% will be blue. Now, in actual real life, we know that chances are random, so it never ends up being a perfect 50-50, but this allows us to give accurate predictions based on the genes of the parents as to what the genes of the offspring will be and what those offspring will look like. So what you're going to do for your final project you're going to submit on genetics, it's not really a project, but for your final task is you're going to write your own genetics problem, and you can post it on the Google Classroom or you can post it as a comment on the video. Please do not answer it. I want you to find somebody to trade problems with or somebody else's problem to answer it. They're going to answer your problem and then you get to check their answer and tell them if they're correct or incorrect. So if I post a problem and Naomi answers it, I'm going to go back and look for Naomi's answer and tell her if she got it right or not. So that's how I'm going to show Miss Kat that I know what I'm talking about, that I know what the answer to my own problem is by checking the person's work who does my problem. Here's some examples of traits that you talked about from the awesome squirrel video course. Squirrels being able to flatten their body, or you talked about they have behaviors like they know how to lock their eyes on a certain position or turn in their arms to change their rotation, or having like a long tail, having longer claws, things like that. I want you to think of a trait that helped the squirrels to achieve the obstacle course that we saw. And you're not going to know if these traits are dominant or recessive, so you could Google them, like, is having a long tail in a squirrel dominant or recessive? If you don't find the answer, you can just make it up. So let's say I was going to take claws, and I want to think about if the claws are big or small. So I could make capital C, large claws, and lowercase c, small claws. And that means large claws will be inherited over small claws. I could also decide that it's going to be the opposite way. It's up to you. If you can't research and find the answer, you can make it up. Okay, so post your question in the classroom by Friday, please, and have a great weekend. Thank you.